Hi, my name is Damon Lembi, and I'm the CEO of Learnit. I hope you enjoy your problem-solving class. If you do, please like and subscribe to my page. Enjoy your class.
Hello, and welcome to Learnit's course on creative thinking for problem solving. My name is Christian Durso, and I know I say this a lot, but this one really is my favorite course we teach at Learnit. There's something really great about accessing our creative side to solve our very serious problems at work. They are serious, but we forget that we sometimes need to apply a different part of our brain to be able to come up with a solution that we otherwise wouldn't if we were just focused on the analytical part of our brains. I want to talk about a study that was done by George Land at NASA. He set up a creativity test to help NASA identify who is going to be the most creative engineers and scientists for their work. And the tool worked so well, he decided to try it on children to see what happens with creativity in children. He did a test where he studied them at 5 years old, then again at 10 years old, then again at 15, and then finally again as adults. And what he found was when he studied 5-year-olds, he found that 98% of 5-year-olds actually test in a very highly creative range. And there's something really strange that happens. Around 10 years old, that number nosedives to 30%. So something happens between 5 years old and 10 years old when we stop learning about creativity and we start trying to get the answer right. And it keeps getting worse. The news does not get any better. When he gets to 15 years old, that number nosedives to 12%. And finally, as adults, 2%. It's really sad. It kind of breaks my heart almost because people really do have creativity within them. But somewhere along the line, whatever happens between 5 and 10, 10 and 15, you learn to let it go. You learn to maybe be embarrassed, or you maybe learn only the right answer is something that I should engage in, not trying new things. But what George Land found was that creativity isn't the thing we learn. The thing we actually learn is how to be not creative. That is the thing that we learn. We're actually imbued with creativity. We have a ton of it that comes a part of our equipment, but we let it go after a period of time, finding that it might not have as much value as, say, coming up with exactly the right answer. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today, a lot of what we're going to think about is how to restore that creativity so we can apply them to our very serious problems. I want to give you an example of how this works in the real world. Take, for instance, a building. There was a manager of a building, and he had a lot of tenants in this building that were complaining that the elevator just took too long. It was too slow. And the complaints kept coming in and kept coming in and kept coming in. And he said to himself, what am I going to do about this? It's going to cost a fortune to fix this elevator, the new mechanics, the new technology, maybe a whole new elevator system. And then he rethought about the problem. He began thinking creatively about it. Rather than fix the speed of the elevator, what happens if I make the wait for the elevator more enjoyable? And so what he did instead of fixing the elevator was he installed mirrors next to the elevator as a test to see what would happen. So now there were mirrors next to the elevator, and people, while they were waiting, they could do the very pleasant thing that everyone loves to do, which is look at themselves, look at things, and just make sure that they're looking okay for the day. And suddenly they were occupied. And then the weird thing is the complaints about the elevator speed went away. Now, he didn't fix the speed of the elevator, but what he did was he gave people something to do so they were not feeling the weight of the time so much. He's not the only one who did that. I will talk about another organization that you know very well did something very similar, and you're probably not even aware they did it. It's a creative way to solve the problem below the problem, which was feeling the weight of time. Often the problem that gets presented to us is not the problem we actually need to solve. So creativity helps find better ways to solve something than our initial instincts tell us. So here's the outline for today. In this course, what we're going to cover is how we're going to achieve our creative solutions, how to think creatively in each step of a problem-solving process. It's going to be laid out in 4 steps. So that 4-step system that we're going to use, and you go through each one. We're going to talk about each one. We're going to give you some tools. So please keep a piece of paper nearby. If you have a friend or a partner to go through this with, all the better. So please try to do that if possible. So get ready, get that piece of paper, get a friend or a colleague to go through this with, and I will see you in the next chapter to begin in earnest. So welcome back. Let's get going. So what do we mean when we say creative problem solving? So for our purposes, creative problem solving is this definition here. It's a process that arrives at a solution in a very novel, unique, surprising, or maybe even innovative way. The question is, why would we want to do that? Why do we want something that's novel or unique? Well, there's a lot of different answers. And the truth is, sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you really just want an analytic answer. You need analytic problem solving, right? Sometimes that's the right option. Before we get into which option will be right for you, let's just look at the difference between analytical problem solving and creative problem solving. So if you're looking for something that's straightforward, something that's traditional in their solution, if you're looking for just something where your emphasis on convergent thinking. We're going to talk about the difference between convergent thinking and divergent thinking. Convergent thinking is that stuff that we do between 5 and 10 when we try to come up with the right answer. Divergent thinking is more web-like, where we're finding other ideas. So here's some reasons why you might need to do it, right? An example, right? If your copier breaks down, you need an obvious, straightforward solution. You need to look it up in the book, call up tech support. There's an analytical way to solve this problem. Or, hey, I have a problem where maybe we're not getting enough diverse candidates applying for the job, right? Our tried and true solution that's been working in other places, we want to look at those, right? That's analytical problem solving. On the other hand, sometimes you might want to decide that you need something a little bit different. You need something that's unique, clever, or again, innovative, right? Novel. Then we're going to need to infuse some creative thinking into each step of the process. So in creative problem solving, you're looking for alternatives. Not a singular right answer. You're looking for options. So you're looking for different things. This is iterative work. So an example of this might be if your organization is struggling with employee retention, right? And you want to create an innovative and unique way to keep that environment so that it can retain talent. This is creative thinking. We need to think of something creative for this. Or hey, let's say we manufacture customizable coffee cups, but the demand for single-use plastics has decreased and your sales have been affected. You might need to pivot your business model in a way that is more innovative, right? How are we going to do something differently? That is going to take some creative problem solving. So how do we know if we want a creative solution? Knowing which approach to take really boils down to knowing what type of solution you want. So your goal will be the thing to determine which process to apply, analytic or creative. Now, between the two, analytic is probably your first recourse. Again, it's that thing we learned to do between 5 and 10. Be analytic. You get a lot of rewards that way. So there's no need to shoehorn in surprising solutions for ordinary problems, right? A lot of times, just an analytical problem solving mindset is the way to go. But here's a few other ways, right? If you've tried things in the past and they've failed, you've tried again and again, all the analytical models seem to not be working, right? We might need to have some creative thinking. Or if your intention really is to radically disrupt something, like an industry, traditional solutions, things that worked before, things that are a part of the status quo, it's just not going to work anymore. The other one is, hey, our culture dictates it. If your organization is something that rejects the status quo and actually expects innovation from people, well, then we might need to go toward creative problem solving. So let's talk about the 4 steps. We're going to break it down fairly easy. They're going to seem very easy to swallow, but there's a lot underneath each hood. Step 1 is to determine what the problem is. We already started doing that. It seems simple, but there's a lot more below this one, because rather than state what the problem is, we're going to ask a question about the problem. Asking a question is going to invite a lot of different iterative answers. So that's going to be step 1. Step 2 is we're going to apply divergent thinking to the question from step 1. So we move into some brainstorming, and we're going to give you a lot of different divergent thinking tools to help get the creative juices flowing. So it's not just only brainstorming with Post-it notes. That is one way, but there's a lot of different ways to do this. Step 3 is going to require us to choose a solution. So we're going to give you a matrix and some creative tools to arrive at the best solution for us. And lastly, step 4, you have to tell people about it. You have to roll it out. And the thing is, creative solutions usually make people feel a little uneasy. Hasn't been tried before, not so sure if we want to go along with it. You're going to need to communicate to your teams, to your partners, to your colleagues that we're trying something different, and here's why we're trying something different. Get them on board with it, right? That's going to be that last part. So how do we guarantee a creative outcome? A lot of times when people think about creative problem solving, we really only think about idea generation, right? Like I was saying, brainstorming, those Post-it notes, it's a huge part of it. But really, creativity needs to happen at every step of the problem-solving process. So even though we broke it down into 4, I invite you to continue to make it your own, right? You got to be creative and intuitive about this whole process. So in order to begin, before we go into the next chapter, I want you to write down on your own. I need you to think of a problem that you're currently dealing with, any kind of problem that you're facing. And think about it. Does it need to be creative problem solving or does it need to be analytical? Try to see if you can come up with something that could really use a little bit of innovation, a novel or unique way of going about it. Make sure you write that down in front of you. And if you're not sure and you're really strapped, you can maybe use a hypothetical. We have meetings that are too long. We need a creative solution to shorten the meetings or to deal with the fact that meetings are too long. Maybe we have people who are late consistently to the meetings. Those are a couple of hypotheticals for you that you could use if you don't have one in front of you. But before you start the next chapter, make sure you have that down in front of you. What is a problem that you're working on that could use a little bit of creativity? See you in the next chapter. So welcome back. You now have your problem in front of you, the one that needs some creative thinking to come up with a good solution. So the first step is, what's the problem? You might be even thinking, well, didn't I just do that? I just came up with what the problem was. It might seem really simple, right? Some examples here. You have employees who are complaining about, we don't have enough vacation time. So the problem must be that we don't have enough vacation time to offer. Or customers are complaining, the product's battery life is too short. So the problem is the battery needs to last longer. We need to make a better battery. Customers are also complaining about the elevator, so we need a faster elevator. So hold off on jumping to a solution too soon. We really do want to feel like we want to understand the problem before we jump in and start searching for solutions. So really, the first part here is just going to be to actively stop. Like that, okay? Stop. Before you say, what's the problem? Say, I need to ask some questions about what I think the problem is. We have a tendency to want to dive in and make a solution and act fast. The thing is, if we do that, we're going to do what we think already works. We're not going to get a chance to surprise ourselves and come up with something that no one has done yet, right? The thing that comes quickest to us and fastest to us, that's the thing that's usually the thing that's been done before. We want to avoid that in this creative thinking process. So what if employees actually have plenty of vacation time, but they're hesitant to use it because it might affect their performance review? What if the battery's life isn't too short, but maybe there's a lot of unnecessary features on the product that are draining the battery life? See, in both those cases, if we just jumped to the solution that was presented to us, we would waste a lot of time when maybe the solution could have been solved a lot easier. The thing is this, problems do not arrive to us in a neutral state. Problems are presented through the lens of the presenter, right? Through the lens of their experiences, through their biases, through their own expertises, through their understanding of what the problem is, and also their assumptions. So we really do need to take a step back to achieve as much objectivity as we possibly can. So we need to spend some time examining it, learning about it new, taking fresh eyes to this problem that we can pretend to not know much about yet. Say, okay, I hear that you're saying that's the problem. That's the way it's arriving to me from a non-neutral state. Let me take a step back. Let me see what else about this product and the battery life. Let me see what else is going on with this vacation time. What is the experience of waiting for the elevator and how long does it take and what does that really look like? So there's a few questions that can get us into this frame of mind. These are 5 Ps. It's a model to help you just gain a wider perspective of what the problem might be. And they're based on a model that was developed by Thomas Wendell Wettelsberg. And we highly recommend his book, What's Your Problem? There's a few ways to do it. One is to start with perspectives. This is where we get understanding of how other people actually view the problem. So one thing you can do is start making a list of stakeholders that are related to the problem and ask them what they think about the problem. Don't ask them what to do about the problem. We're not really looking for their ideas and solutions just yet. Just describe the problem. Walk me through how that problem presents itself to you. What are you seeing, right? We just want to notice and wonder about their perspective of what the problem is. Also, pertinent information. You want to find all the information you can that's relevant to the topic. So you want to keep the other perspectives in mind as you search for that information. As people tell you their perspective, you might find out, oh, I need to learn more about that. I need to learn more about this aspect of it too. You also want to take a close look at how you are related to the problem. Do you have a position in it? Do you have some skin in the game? For example, if I was responsible for determining and making the policy for vacation days, I might actually feel attacked if someone said, hey, we don't have enough vacation time. I would say, hey, I spent a lot of time doing that. Of course you do, right? So I might have a position that might prevent me from seeing something that I otherwise would not if I was more objective. So just examine your own position. Another thing to do is take a look at positive exceptions. Look for areas where this problem is not occurring. In the vacation example, we can say, let's look for people that actually feel they have plenty of vacation time. Let's talk to them. What are they getting out of it? What is their perspective on this problem? Look for the things that are actually working. Right? Also, consider this one. It's also back to biases, kind of in the position. Do you play favorites? You've heard that expression, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, consider that if you always have a favorite solution you go to, you might always go to that. So if we always have a problem and the example and the thing you like to do often is just to throw training at it, be wary that training is actually the solution in that example. So these are some ways to just consider how can you get more objective so you can take a bit more of a distance from the problem itself so you can really find out what the problem is. And then we're going to move to framing it as a question. This is going to help spark creativity. And again, we're not solving it yet. So many times, and I work with clients all the time when they're at this stage, they say, I found the solution, right? Hold off. Really allow yourself time to let it develop. So start with a question rather than a statement. Here's what we need to do is a statement. A question is, how might we do this, right? So come up with what is the question that you would like to then brainstorm on. And there's all kinds of different valuable questions to look at, and you're going to find the best question. So how do we do this? What is the right question? The framing of the question shouldn't actually imply a solution. It's where it's a statement, but it's really kind of undercover as a question, but it's really a statement. So in the elevator example, the question might be in the wrong way. How might we pay for a new elevator by the end of the month? See, that question, even though it is a question, it actually already takes the solution of paying for the new elevator with a timeline. Right? It's too specific. So you really want to broaden it out. It should also be able to be fully answered by almost anyone who's associated with the problem. So it can't be too in the weeds there, and it should be open-ended. The question wants to bring other ideas to it. It wants to have gravity. Also, how? How might and we? How? When you ask the word how, it implies the process. It means there's a lot of things that are going to happen. How? Might. Might means there's possibility. How might we do something? There's possibilities, all kinds of different ways of doing. We makes it collaborative. How might we do this? The original problem was the elevator is too slow. The reframed question is, how might we make the wait for the elevator more enjoyable? And as you come up with questions for your problem, it's okay to have more than one. You might end up with 2 or 3 really good questions. You say, okay, that's the question I want to know more about. Maybe as we go forward through steps 2, 3, and 4, you're going to have to choose only one of those questions. You just know that of the other couple questions that you thought were really good, you'll just have to repeat the process on those questions too. But it's going to be normal to come up with a few really good questions. But where we want to start is here, which is why rather than jumping into brainstorming solutions, I want you to jump into something called Q-storming. This is the tool for creating questions that reframe your problem. Okay, this can be useful, really useful during the first stage of that problem-solving process. So we know we have a problem with the copy machine. We know we have a problem with the vacation time. We know we have a problem with the battery. We know we have a problem with the elevator. So let's get together and let's go into Q-storming, where we just ask questions. We don't answer the questions, but we say, let's come up with all the good questions that we can come up with around this problem. As you ask questions and resist answering them, only questions, it opens thinking. It also empowers a collaborative, creative, strategic kind of thought. It also gives you some tools for moving beyond limitations and perceptions because it's just a question. You can continue to ask it. It also gives us a great sense of control when we're looking for breakthroughs. We need a really good question. So let's just focus on questions. So what does this Q-storming process look like? It feels very similar to brainstorming, except we're not coming up with a good idea. We're coming up with a good question. So as you do it, if you get together in a room with someone, pick a facilitator, someone who's going to keep track of everything up on the wall, perhaps they're in Post-its or a whiteboard. And you identify and you describe the problem. And you set the ground rules for saying, here's the area of focus we want to be in. And then we also want to just describe what that problem actually is. And then we're going to generate questions. Okay, so you're going to have the group come up with and produce as many questions as you possibly can within the allotted amount of time. Could be a half hour, could be a full day, could be 5 minutes. But we're only accepting questions and we are not answering them, right? And not having preambles, not having justifications, just asking questions and putting it up. And after you're done with that, you're going to review, refine, and prioritize them. You're going to say, okay, these questions deal with this theme. These questions really deal with this part of it. Might not be so relevant yet. These questions are more global. These are a little too specific. You group them together and you look at it and you figure out which questions do we want to go into a brainstorming process with. You might end up with 2 or 3 really good ones that might begin pointing you toward a lot of different ideas. So here's the next exercise, and I want you to do it before we come to the next chapter. I want you to take a look at that problem you came up with in the previous chapter, and I want you to reframe it as a question. If you have someone else that's with you right now, go ahead and try a Q-storming session with them. If you don't have them with you, maybe just do it by yourself. Ask yourself, how might we? Give yourself 5 minutes or 10 minutes to really just brainstorm on only questions and really try to see what happens when you resist answering it right away. Go toward another question. Sometimes really good questions lead to better questions. So think of that problem that needs some creative solution. How might we? And again, if you're not sure what to do yet, you can also use a hypothetical. Meetings being too long, people showing up late to meetings. How might we get people here on time? How might we reduce the size of the meeting? How might we make the meetings more engaging? Any of those things. So go ahead and do that for the next 5 to 10 minutes, and I'll see you in the next chapter. So welcome back. You remember our opening story about the elevators? About those elevators that were going just too slow, and then the manager, rather than fixing the elevators, installed mirrors, and suddenly the complaints went away? Well, there's another organization that you are very, very familiar with that did this very same thing to you, and you might not even realize it, and you might not like it. A while ago, airports were dealing with a problem. People would arrive at baggage claim waiting for their luggage, and they would wait too long, and the complaints stacked up. They were saying, we're waiting way too long for our luggage. Why can't our luggage get here faster? And then there was lots of people crowded, and it was causing all kinds of problems. And so what did the airport not do? The airport did not figure out how to get your luggage there faster. No, they decided to get you there slower. They said, okay, we're not going to get the luggage there faster. Let's figure out how to get the passengers to baggage claim a lot later. Let's make them walk here. Let's let them go through a circuitous route. Let's make them go upstairs and then downstairs again. You notice that route got a little bit longer in the last several years? Well, there's a good reason. It's because when you now arrive, your bag is ready to come off of the baggage claim. Complaints go away, the log jams go away. The same time it took before is now no longer a problem. I told you might not like it, right? So let's think about how we might be able to apply these creative solutions. We took a lot of looking at questioning and how to come up with what the problem was. Let's talk about how we can generate options. We're familiar with brainstorming. We're going to start there. Brainstorming really is about having ideas without having judgment on them. In the world of improvisation, there's something called the yes and. This is where someone says something and you accept it and you build on it. This is what allows great improvisation scenes to succeed. I say something and you say yes rather than saying no, right? So when it comes to brainstorming, we want that same creative spirit. Someone says something, and even if we don't have the budget, we don't have the money, no way would it work, you say, yes, great, we'll put it down and we'll build upon it. Here's where we come up with really good ideas. And so here's a few that we're going to go through. We're going to go through all of them. Brainstorming, role storming, metaphorical thinking, and making the familiar unfamiliar. All these options for generating options. So we'll start with brainstorming. You've heard of it, but you might not know its background or its origins. So it was developed by Alex Osborne, who was an advertising executive in the 1940s. And it was specifically designed to offer an alternative to negative conference thinking. This is where ideas get shot down or judged way too early. So brainstorming takes place in small groups and it follows some pretty simple rules. The main rule is to generate as many ideas as possible. So you want to go for quantity over quality. With creativity, this is often a really good way to go. The more you get down, the more will actually be good. So generate a lot of ideas. Sometimes the really, really good idea won't happen until you've gotten through 35 mediocre, obvious, and bad ideas. It actually takes that long to get to the good idea. So go for quantity, not quality. You also don't want to criticize ideas when they come up. They come up, say, yep, let's put it down, and you put it down. You're going to deal with judging it against criteria later. It's really hard to write and to edit at the same time. Any really good author will tell you this. They need to spend a good period of time creating it and then put on an editor hat later to figure out what's working and what needs cutting away. Same thing in our brainstorming. Wild ideas are welcome here. You can also combine or improve an idea. Someone gives you an idea, say, I want to improve upon that. I want to add to it. And you get them all down. The other thing other than brainstorming is something called role storming. It's similar where you come up with ideas, but you do it taking on a different role. This requires you to kind of play Halloween in a way. You adopt a different role than your own. And a lot of different ways you can do this. You can pretend to be a different person in your organization. If I were in marketing, how would I handle this? If I was in the C-suite, how would I see this problem? If I was in operations, what would this actually look like? Let me come up with a bunch of ideas with that hat on. You can also do role storming by taking on a very famous personality. We might not know what Steve Jobs would have done in this situation, but we can ask ourselves, if I was Steve Jobs, what would I do? If I had $1 billion, what would the solution actually look like? If I was the president of the United States, what would I do? If I was Alexander Hamilton, what would I do here? The idea is it gets you in a different mindset and it puts you in a different perspective. Well, if I had $1 million and I was a genius, this is what I would do. Suddenly, maybe you have a $1 million idea that is a genius idea. You just put on a different hat than the one you're originally looking through. Role storming. You can also do something called metaphorical thinking. Sometimes it's hard to just jumpstart into generating a lot of ideas from scratch. So sometimes we need a jumping off point. Metaphorical thinking can help serve as a prompt to follow, and out of this comes some fresh perspective. So, for example, can we compare our problem, the one we're having, to learning a new language? If our problem was similar as learning a new language, how would I approach learning a new language? If my problem was like building the Verrazano Bridge, where would I begin? How would that start? Or how would we solve this problem if this actually existed in a totally different field? How would it be solved if this were in the medical field? How would it be solved if this were in the NBA? So this is just putting it in a different light. This allows us to think about it differently and put us in positions where we can see it from a totally different perspective. We're flying around the house to get a really good sense of what it actually looks like. So this is just another thing we can do, metaphorical thinking. Another one is called making the familiar unfamiliar. This one, it can be really useful when your brain is just stuck on one solution. You're like, it's the only solution I can come up with. It's the only one. It's obvious to me. It seems like the obvious one. Before you jump right to it, take a cruise through making the familiar unfamiliar. Take that one solution that you can't get away from and try exaggerating it, right? So let's just, for example, say that our problem is we need to grow our traffic to our website. And so we're thinking we need to increase our email newsletter subscribers, right? And the obvious choice is just we need to advertise more, right? So let's just advertise more. It's the only thing I can think of. I'm not even being creative. It's just the only thing I can think of. So advertise more. Well, go ahead and exaggerate that. So what would it look like if you advertised way too much? Let's just say a visitor comes to your website and they're bombarded with being asked for their email address every 60 seconds, right? That's an exaggeration. Okay, maybe that's too far. But what if we backed it off? What if it was every 5 minutes? What does that make me think of? What if we sent an email newsletter every single day? Is that too much? What if it was every other day? So you begin playing with pushing it toward a limit. Exaggerating it, you could also go the other way, completely limit it. What if we did not have access to email at all and we needed to grow our newsletter? How do we do that? Okay, well, we would send out postcards, I guess. But okay, is that a potential solution, right? Might we be able to get ideas here where we don't have electricity? What do we do now? You can also combine ideas or improve upon ideas. One thing you can also do is just take something that already exists and change one tiny part of it. Right. This happened a lot with another organization you're probably very familiar with. They said, we're going to take the newspaper model and instead we're going to deliver DVDs. Netflix, the empire was born. And now people are saying, we want to be the Netflix of reading. We want to be the Netflix of enter whatever organization you want or whatever field you want, right? So this is where you take the familiar and make it something new. So just consider that this is another way to get past ideas. So here's what I want you to do for this next exercise. I want you to think about that problem. Now you have a good question, maybe a series of questions. I want you to think about which divergent thinking strategy you would most want to use. Would it be the brainstorming? Would it be the role storming? Would it be the metaphorical thinking? And I want you to plan, what would it look like? Who would participate? What stakeholders would you need to be present? How long? Would you need a retreat in Tahiti? Would you need 30 minutes in the conference room? Could you do 5 minutes on a Zoom session with someone? What does that look like for you to actually get a brainstorming or role storming session together? What would the timeline be? Who might facilitate it? What would you do? Would you have a bunch of Post-it notes? Would you have people talk to each other? I want you to come up with your own creative way of using one of these models. How would you address your problem with one of these divergent thinking models? So take some time, 5 to 10 minutes on your own. Sketch it out for yourself. Have fun. I dare you to have fun on this one. Okay? And I'll see you in the next chapter. So welcome back. You've now taken some time to think about what your problem is. You've formulated it as a question. You maybe even engaged in some cue storming. And out of those best questions, you engaged in one of the divergent thinking models. Maybe you role stormed or brainstormed or did some metaphorical thinking to come up with and generate quantity of ideas. This is a lot of really good creative work. We don't want to move too quickly. And remember, in that brainstorming or role storming, we weren't jumping to the right solution. We were coming up with a lot of the good ones. And now we might even have a few that look pretty good. We might go with them yet, but we're still not sure. I encourage you, with all this great creative work, to please pause between steps 2 and 3. Don't pause the video, just pause between them. A good night's sleep. Taking a step away, taking a breath, getting away from the environment where it all happened. Really, sometimes a good night's sleep can really do it. Sometimes just stepping away for a week or two, it's really useful. Stephen King, whether you like his books or not, we can agree he's a very creative, prolific author who creates a lot of interesting worlds and characters. What he does after he finishes the first draft, which is in a way just the brainstorming, he's just figuring out what the story is, the first draft. He says he puts it in a drawer, although nowadays he probably puts it in a file somewhere, but he puts it away. He pauses for 6 months before he returns to it. He wants to be able to look at it with fresh eyes to see, okay, what works? What is the story? What can I cut? What isn't working so well? What needs more help? What really is working about this? But it's that pause that allows him to say, you know what, I'm going to look at this with new eyes. While we might not get 6 months to take a look at our new solution, we should take some version of it, whatever is appropriate, but also gets us away from it. That pause is so important. We've had a lot of great ideas. I want to step away, let my brain do something different. So pause. So when we come back to it, we are now ready to do the work of choosing a really good solution. So we've taken a large quantity of ideas. We have a lot of potential. We want to move forward with the best option. So how do we do this, right? Sometimes we just intuitively feel that's the one, but we want to apply it in a way where we can actually replicate this process again and again. We also still want to, again, infuse the creativity in every part of the process. So choosing a solution, we don't want to just rush to the convergent thinking, the right answer, the right answer, the right answer. We still, in this phase, want to come up with divergent thinking. How are we going to do this? Let's organize it around what we're going to call an idea prioritization matrix. So a couple really good criteria to start with to run along an X and a Y axis. It just looks like this, right? Now, these are two very obvious ones. They work a lot of the time, but here's where I want you to get creative with it. So how much value could this bring? How much time is this going to take to develop? How much time or effort was it going to take to develop? These are two criteria that you could use, but these are just two of many. You can mix and match and combine all different kinds of criteria. We'll give you a few options later, but let's just work with these two for now, right? So we have this matrix, right? We have high value, we have low value, we have not a lot of effort, we have, oh, this is going to take a lot of time and resources. And we begin plotting our ideas. We take an idea and say, okay, here's one idea. This is going to take a long time, but it will possibly bring a really, really high value. So let's put it in the upper right-hand quadrant. Okay, this actually could be really easy, and it might give us some value. So you begin charting the ideas around to find out where the ideas land in your matrix. And again, these are only two different criteria you could use. There's lots of different ones. But as you do this, okay, we're coming out with, this is going to be really, really a lot of effort, and I don't think it's going to bring a ton of value. So maybe all the ideas that land in this area we're going to put away, right? Okay, maybe these are low priorities, right? It doesn't bring a lot of value, but it also is really easy to do. We could get it done in a snap, not a lot of value. Well, let's put those in the back burner. Maybe these are not the ideas to go with just yet. Over here, we have, it's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of resources, but the value will be really high. So these might be more long-term. We're going to take a look at these core business values. We're going to use them on a longer period of time. Maybe perhaps we'll organize how we're going to do this over a longer period. And then here we have the low-hanging fruit, right? This is high value, really easy to do. Let's go here. So again, high value, high effort. These are two criteria, but I want you to utilize other ones. And I'll give you a few here, okay? How quickly are employees going to accept it? Meaning they're immediately going to accept it. They're not going to accept it at all. That's one criteria you could have on the x-axis. You could run that one against another one, customer satisfaction. How satisfied will this make our customers? Extremely satisfied, not satisfied at all. Now you have an entirely different matrix where we're saying employees are going to accept this right away and it's going to offer a lot of customer satisfaction. Now we're putting this in, now we're finding what is going to work the absolute best. You can also use time. How much time is this going to take? How creative is this idea? Is this idea really obvious, or is it super creative and no one has ever done it before? Whichever two criteria feel like they're going to be the most valuable for you, use those as your X and Y axis. And this is going to give you a creative way to think about how you're going to choose the best option. So that's going to be your next exercise. I want you to think about the two different criteria. Think about which ones you might use. Use ones that maybe I didn't even come up with. Which ideas might you run to make your matrix creative and unique to you? And maybe it really just is. Is this going to bring high value, low value? Is it going to take a lot of effort or a little bit of effort? And that's okay. But just know that you have the ability to be creative in your choosing. So go do that now. Take about 5 to 10 minutes. Come up with different ways that you can make this a creative way to choose your solution. So welcome back. You now have some questions you're going to ask about your problem. You now have also a divergent model that you feel comfortable with. You maybe have a couple of criteria that are going to work for your matrix that are going to help you out to decide which of the vast quantity of solutions you came up with in the divergence, where do they go, and how are we going to decide which idea goes where, and then which quadrant is most useful for what our aims are. We're pretty much almost done with step 3, but keep these final considerations in mind. You want to allow time for this step to occur. You don't want to go through all the work of creativity just to feel rushed into a decision. Rushing will make us default to our biases and our old ways of working. If we want creativity, it needs the space and time to do its due diligence. Also, keep an open mindset that's really focused on creativity as you evaluate these solutions. Remember your why for why we chose the creative problem-solving path over the analytical path. Why are we doing something new? Often as we get close to the solution, it can become scary to go with that solution. And it'll be, let's just go back to the way we think things are going to be. Remember the why we chose this path in the first place. And don't forget to keep your evaluation as objective as possible. You want to involve other stakeholders in this decision-making process. And if that's not possible, really try to look at the decision through the other lenses. And as we leave step 3, we've chosen that solution. It falls on that matrix with our chosen criteria. We have a new way forward. It's creative, it's inventive, it's novel. We now need to tell other people about it. Even though just because it's creative, it doesn't mean that it's going to sell itself. So we really do need to communicate this. So first thing you want to do is just decide who's going to do it. Who's going to communicate this new solution? New ideas, creativity, it usually brings some kind of turbulence. People are uncertain about the future when it feels new. So are you going to do this through email or a team meeting in person? What's the best way to communicate this? Who's going to do it? When are you going to communicate how it's going to be implemented? Where are you going to do it? Be prepared. The people that you're going to communicate it to, they haven't always been a part of the process. Sometimes they didn't even know we were going in a creative solution, right? So you're going to have to bring them along, show them your emotional homework along the way, which means you want to align the message. So in your communication, you really want to emphasize how the solution that you're coming up with, this new way of going about it, still aligns with the organization's strategy. So we're not reinventing the company overnight. We still have our missions. We still have our values. It feels outside the box, but make the case as to why this still fits. And then also give the why. Let people know why we went the creative way rather than just the analytical way, and how we arrived at this particular solution. So show them your homework. How did this solution rise above the other alternatives, right? Why was this one better? Talk about the idea matrix too here. Why did we go this route? And be prepared for questions. People are going to be concerned. It's going to be new to them. Have an online forum, a town hall, a Q&A. People's tolerance for creativity, especially when it's foisted upon them, it's going to vary. They're going to have the same doubts that you had, that you took a lot of time to go around with the asking of the Q storming, with the brainstorming. So you've been through a whole process that not everyone has been through yet. Respect that. People are going to have objections. Don't take it personally. They just haven't been through the process yet. Be prepared to answer those questions. So right now, this will be the last exercise I want us to do. What does your communication plan look like? How much time would you actually need to do something like this, to prepare for it? Who would you need to consult? And also think about what questions or objections might arise. Be prepared to answer those. So take 5 to 10 minutes on your own right now. How would you create your communication plan for your creative solution? So welcome back. Here is the 4-step process in full summary. Where we've been, what's the problem, really waiting to think about that, asking questions about it. Then divergent thinking. Are we role storming? Are we brainstorming? Are we going to add metaphorical thinking? Taking a pause between 2 and 3 to let it all settle, and then choosing a solution by deciding what are the 2 biggest criteria, setting a matrix there, X and Y axis, allowing our ideas to populate and find which quadrant is going to be most useful for us. And finally, when we come up with that solution, having an actual plan to let people come along the ride with us. Now, 4 steps feels kind of like a convergent thinking answer, right? Here's the simple linear way to do it. I want you to be creative in each of these. Break them open, use them, go backwards, go forwards. Be creative about how you be creative. And now, one last thing to leave you with before we say goodbye. We've been through elevators and we've been through luggage. I want to talk about something that might make us actually smile. So the Downtown Dog Rescue, DDR, in Pasadena, California, they had a problem that was common with pet shelters: overcrowding. And to solve their problem, right, it was a lack of space. And they looked at that problem with creative thinking. They realized that pet overpopulation and euthanasia in shelters, this isn't a pet problem. This is actually a poverty problem. Do you see how the problem presented as too many pets turned into a problem of, what about poverty? Maybe that's the thing to look at. How might we reduce poverty when it comes to pets? What they were finding was that pet owners didn't have the money to take care of their pets, and so they were surrendering them at alarming rates. So DDR, the Downtown Dog Rescue, they created the Shelter Intervention Program to work with low-income families to find creative solutions to keep pets and people together. Now, this is creative problem solving at its finest. I encourage you to do the same thing with your problems, to take that divergent thinking, that web-like thinking, To go back to that area when we were 5 years old to 10 years old, when we were okay thinking of things and it didn't have to be the right answer right away. Spend some time there. We still have that convergent brain to come back to when it is time to choose that solution. But coming up with the really good ones, it takes something a little bit extra special. Here's some of the key takeaways that I want you to take with you for your time. That it really does take time, that you really do need creativity to take over a period of time. So if it needs to be fast, it's unlikely to be the most creative solution you can come up with. So a lot of tools you can come up with for that divergent thinking. Make sure you try to use all of them. Change it up. It's going to make it feel fresh. And then asking yourself if you actually have the right problem to solve, right? Is this just a pet problem? Is this a poverty problem? Is this an elevator speed problem, or do we need to make the wait much more enjoyable? I want to thank you for being here with me today. Again, my name is Christian Durso. If you haven't joined us at Offsite, please do so. It's a great community where we can talk about these ideas openly with each other and build on them. So thank you for choosing Learnit. Thank you for being here. And I really hope to see you in one of our in-person classes where we can talk about these ideas and build upon them together. Thank you so much, and I'll see you at the next course.